Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everyone. It's funny, last time we got together with her, and even the time before that, which has spanned a little bit of a time, we've taken some time away. We talked about the tariffs. Guess what we're talking about today? The tariffs. They haven't gone away. Things have escalated even more. Costco suing the Trump administration over the tariffs. A lot of new developments. And what's law got to do with it? That's the name of this podcast. She is our professional of the year, based out of New York City, a partner in Greenspoon, Marder, LLP. So great to have her back with us. Carol Sigmond is on the program. How is everything in your world today?
Everything is great. How are you, Steve? Did you have a good holiday?
It was good. Thanksgiving was good. How about you?
I had lots of fun. I was down in North Carolina hiking.
That's something very unusual for for Thanksgiving. It definitely is. So let's look at what's going on here in terms of the tariffs. Now, I'm not surprised, but I haven't heard a lot about lawsuits until Costco getting attention within the last, I want to say, even 24 hours. There's a bunch of other lawsuits pending out there over the tariffs, right?
Yes. So let's just set a little bit of context. The Supreme Court heard oral argument the first week in November. It was a very interesting argument. This oral argument involved the case of VOS versus the Trump administration on certain of the tariffs. The case was argued on behalf of the VOS by Neil Katyal, who former Solicitor General. And there was the Solicitor General was arguing for the government. What was interesting about it, and what remains interesting about the choice of Mr. Katyal, is that the lawyers who brought the original suit come from as far away from Mr. Katyal as you can find. They came from the Federalist Society. So you had a merger of a number of forces within the Republican Party as well as the Democratic Party opposing the tariffs in this oral argument, because you had the state of Oregon represented by the Oregon Attorney General, and then you had Mr. Katyal essentially representing a party that came out of the Federalist Society. So let's understand that the argument was not particularly political, as in political parties. It was philosophical. There were essentially three sort of philosophical positions on display. You had the traditional, more liberal view represented by Justices Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson, that you look at the intent of Congress, you construe the statute as Congress intended. These three justices' questions suggest that they support the Court of Appeals, the Federal Circuit decision to find the tariffs unconstitutional, not having been selected by Congress. And again, as a set of context, let's remember that tariffs are reserved to Congress under the Constitution. All tariff statutes must start in the House of Representatives because they are a revenue statute and they are subject to that provision of the Constitution. So that's the context in which these three justices were looking. The next two justices up were Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch. They were particularly active in this argument. Barrett was testing, in a number of her questions, the issue of what did Congress intend. And she seemed to be in agreement, at least to a degree, that Congress did not intend the IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, to be a tariff statute. The president can embargo, he can take other steps, but he cannot impose tariffs. She also was questioning both sides on what's called the major case doctrine. This is a doctrine that has floated around under different names, but has become much more prevalent in the last 20 years with Chief Justice Roberts, who looks at acts of Congress in two ways. If it's a major act, did Congress actually intend to act in this major way or not? So they've been looking, she was looking at the major case doctrine. Was this a major act by Congress? Is this the intended outcome by Congress? Separate and apart from statutory construction, but under this separate doctrine, which assesses, Congress's overall execution of its powers. It's essentially a separation of powers argument. Is this a power reserved to Congress? Did they intentionally give it to the administration? Neil Gorsuch was definitely on that issue. And I thought he asked the most prescient question of the day when he kind of flipped off to the parties and said, are you sure that Congress, in words and substance, are you sure that Congress intended the president to be able to impose a tariff because he doesn't like an advertisement from a Canadian province? This brought some chuckles in the courtroom. I can tell you that the listeners who were silenced, like me, were guffawing, because that was a really telling question. The Chief Justice, who is something of an advocate of the unitary executive, and Brett Kavanaugh, who flirts with this issue, were less clear in their questioning. They could be going either way. Justices Alito and Thomas who seemed to be more advocates of the unitary executive, were essentially saying the president can do whatever he wants and nobody can stop him. So you had 3 justices who were signaling they wanted to affirm the Federal Circuit. You had 2 signaling they wanted to reverse the Federal Circuit. And you had these 4 sort of floating in the middle, 2 of whom look like they're leaning toward affirming the Federal Circuit, which would mean the tariffs are unconstitutional, and 2 that you can't really read right now. Most observers that I've read seem to think that it's at least 5-4 to sustain the Federal Circuit's position that the tariffs are unconstitutional. Whether they will be found unconstitutional under the major case doctrine, or whether they will be found unconstitutional based on essentially the analysis of the Federal Circuit, which was a more classic statutory construction analysis, not entirely clear. There could be multiple opinions. You could have one from Sotomayor and company on that issue. In other words, Congress's intent. You could have a major case doctrine decision with Barrett and Gorsuch. They could sign each other's. They could merge it into one and concur in parts and not in other parts. How many dissents you get, not at all clear to me. Do Kavanaugh and the Chief actually join the majority? The other 5, not clear. Could go anywhere from 7-2 to 5-4. I think many people think 5-4. One of the results of this oral argument, and frankly, Justice Gorsuch's remark, which I do think is the metaphor for the entire argument, is that since prior to the week before the argument, there were like 5 trade cases pending. The week before, 2 more were filed, and since then, 37 have been filed, including the case you mentioned, Costco. But there are some other big
Revlon, the company that is behind Bumblebee Tuna, just a few.
A number of food companies have filed, yes. Some game companies have filed. A tire company has filed. Del Monte, for example, Yokohama Tire. A chemical company has filed, but it looks like they're in the nutrition business. Automotive ceramics. And I'm wondering, will people like Madewell or J. Crew, which clothing importers, they have to be thinking about this. And you ask yourself, why are so many people filing? Okay, so here's the answer. There is a provision in the Code of Federal Regulations that does provide a mechanism, administrative mechanism for getting money back. But it requires there be actual government employees to actually administer this, and it requires some priority by the government to actually execute on it. Between the sort of random cuts in government staffing and the general sort of chaos that there is in government right now due to the various Doge activities, not at all clear how that remand process will work. So I think there is now a serious consideration among the import world, the people who actually pay these duties, to get their claims in court before the Supreme Court rules so that they can proceed with a judicial remedy rather than wait for an administrative remedy that may be slow walked.
And then they'll pass all of that down to the consumer who already paid the increase because of the tariffs, right?
The consumers have absorbed not less than 55% of the tariffs now, and it's increasing every day. And it is being particularly hard on the lower 50% who spend about 15% of the money in this country because it's hitting food.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, has your coffee gone up again?
All the time, including the local little tavern where my friend and I get a burger once every couple of weeks, my best friend. It's kind of our thing. We get together. They've raised the prices. And you can get a shell steak in there. It used to be $12, then it was $14. Now it's up to $17. And I will admit, too, the quality of the meat's not as good. So they're cutting back in some ways. Carol, what are the chances, in your opinion, and again, pie in the sky here, of these companies like Costco getting a refund?
Oh, if these tariffs are found to be unconstitutional, the importers who paid this, be it Costco or Yokohama or whoever else paid them, is going to get money back. The bigger question is, where's the money going to go from there? And I think to the shareholders. Don't think it's coming back to the consumers.
And then lots of other questions that remain. Will they lower the prices? Because they've already raised them up, right? There's so many dynamics involved here, right?
I think it could vary from company to company and situation to situation.
Mm-hmm.
But this is going to be I think a company by company, possibly product by product decision. But generally, I think those returned tax revenue is going to stay with the companies. It may be paid out in the form of shareholder dividends. It may be recycled into the economy as investment. They may do share buybacks. Hard to say, but I think these price increases are sticky. You may get some token reductions, but I don't think there's going to be a serious reduction.
No. That's no matter where you are on either side. That's the pain point. The bar was raised, and everybody's paying it, regardless. And the bar's not coming down, most likely.
Yeah. For example, and it's the big ticket items where you're particularly not going to see the price come down. Somebody who bought a car with the tariffs, they bought the car. The price is not coming down. If the car company can get the extra $5,000, they're going to get the extra $5,000.
Sure.
What happens with Bumblebee food, what happens in the food area, maybe the prices are a little less sticky, but I think consumer appliances, construction materials, all the stuff that's really important, I don't think those prices are going to come down much, if at all.
What's your intuition telling you based on everything you got in front of you? Let's put us to aside here, whether these companies will do anything, whether they'll win. Back to Congress. Do you think there's a chance that it could be found that this was not legal?
Well, that's exactly what's in front of the Supreme Court, that these tariffs are not lawful.
What's your feeling?
I have felt and believed all along from reading the statutes and studying the complaints and also the decisions that the group that believes the tariffs are unconstitutional has the better argument. And I'm referring here to the IEEPA tariffs. I think they have been right all along. If you recall, I made a very bold prediction in June, which was the tariffs would be gone by next June of 26 in the main, with the exception of possibly the Chinese tariffs and maybe the Mexican fentanyl tariffs. Those are the two sort of exceptions I've tossed out on the side. But I think otherwise, this tariff regime is probably gone. If you really look at it hard, you had a 7-4 majority in the Federal Circuit for finding them unconstitutional. You had a 3-0 majority at the CIT. You have 5 justices in oral argument expressing concerns. You have really 3 viable theories for finding them unconstitutional. One is a straight statutory construction argument. One is a more elaborate statutory construction argument. Another is the major case doctrine, which I think is ultimately going to be the majority opinion in the Supreme Court, is the major case doctrine. But so I don't see these IEEPA tariffs surviving.
If you remember back in, I believe it was August, Trump had warned that the loss of the tariffs would destroy the American economy, lead to the Great Depression of 1929 all over again. Not going political, we never do here. We're just looking at what is said and what could transpire. Would that ever happen? Why would that ever happen?
I'm not sure why he went that far. I don't think that there was any serious economist who thought that finding the tariffs unconstitutional would have that profound an effect on the economy. I think most of them that I've been reading suggest that it's, as I see it, little if any drop in prices, probably no further price increases to the public. Maybe that helps to control inflation. I mean, I think that the tariffs have had an inflationary effect. At the same time, they've had a deflationary effect because they've been pulling money out of the system. Money will go back into the system, but it probably will go back in the form of corporate profits, not, expendable income. But I don't think it's going to be that dramatic, either in any direction. If the tariffs survive, then I think we have some different problems. What are the limits on constitutional power at that point? What's the limits on the presidential power? How far can he go? In many areas, not just tariffs. For example, there's going to be legal challenges over the so-called double tap in the Caribbean with the Venezuelan drug dealers. How do those cases change if the Supreme Court were to find that the president had the power to, unilaterally make these tariffs? Those are big questions. That's a very big question. How does the country change in that regard? But I think if the tariffs are found unconstitutional, we go back to business as usual, in the sense that the president is simply the leader of a co-equal branch of government.